welcome to another episode of Making Mindset Matter with me, your host, Lorna McKenna. If you haven't already done so, please do click the subscribe or follow button so you can be notified when a new episode comes out each week. But with that being said, I am going to get into today's episode of talking about how to deal with feeling overwhelmed. In this episode, I'm going to cover what is overwhelm, what is like when we feel it, understand how the mindset around how we perceive the overwhelm, a little bit about my recent experience and some tips to help you overcome it. So I felt called to do this episode on feeling overwhelmed because it's something extremely relevant, because that is exactly how I felt in the middle of last week. I just all of a sudden woke up one day, and I think it was Tuesday, and I was just literally I just didn't know if I was coming or going. I just this sort of overwhelming feeling that I felt so much emotion and so many things to do. I just didn't know how to step forward, and I get this feeling sometimes when there's been so much change and a lot of things have happened that I get this intense feeling of emotion, and I'm just what's the next step? I don't know what I'm doing. And I just have to remind myself to breathe. So I thought it was a really relevant episode to do, because it's something that I used to experience and I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to handle this feeling of overwhelm. I didn't know how to process the emotion, rationalize my thoughts, and have a clear plan to move forward and get through the other side of it, which I have now, and I've learned about it. So I thought I was going to share my knowledge and experience with you. So if you ever get this feeling of overwhelm, and overwhelm, especially emotional overwhelm, is a state of intense emotion that we do find difficult to manage, and it can affect our ability to think and act rationally. And this is sometimes what I found myself when I get this overwhelm. I can't seem to get rational thoughts. I'm just literally like that. It can also when we get this feeling of this intense overwhelm, it can prevent us from just being able to do daily tasks, because when our brain is flowing with all these thoughts, we don't actually know what is the next step. And overwhelm can come from many things. It can be stress, it can be experiences, it can be when you just have a lot going on all at once and you're balancing a lot of plates and they're spinning and you just can't step forward. And I think that's where I had been this week. I was trying to juggle a lot of things, and a lot of change has happened in such a short period of time for me. There's been lots of massive shifts in the direction of where I'm going, that I think all this emotion just had this domino effect, and it just all built up, and I had this massive overwhelm, and I was just wow. And I needed just to pause, reflect, step back in order to help me step forward. So like I said, for me, when feeling massively overwhelmed, it's having this feeling of not knowing if I'm coming or going, and not being able to feel clear on where I need to be moving next. And this is something that I have learned to deal with, because how we process this overwhelm and how we view it is how then we can move forward. So I've spoken before in previous episodes about how our brain naturally goes to the negative. So the me before I worked on my mindset would have looked at overwhelm. I wouldn't have known how to process it. I wouldn't have even registered that I was probably feeling overwhelmed. I'd have just felt really anxious, and I would have let that one day domino, and it'd be a week of this feeling of not knowing if I was coming or going. Whereas now, having worked on my mindset, I know that I can either focus on the overwhelm that's there and just manifest more overwhelm into my life, or I can pause, I can take a deep breath, I can embrace it. I am just feeling this fear of uncertainty for the moment, and I can lean into it and reflect in order to have a plan to move forward. Since working on my mindset, I've understood actually this feeling of overwhelm is quite temporary. Often is very temporary, and I think that's a key thing, because it's hard sometimes, and I've experienced this, and I'm not sure if you have experienced this before. When you're in a more negative mind frame, it's sometimes hard to see what is on the other side of that and see a path through it and see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why I always talk about the importance of breathing. The power of our breath is like, it's just so undervalued. Something so simple like our breath that we have to do to survive is so powerful. And when actually we do the 6 deep breaths, I don't know if I think I've spoke about this. I might have put it on my Instagram story to talk about these. There's a grounding exercise. If you're ever feeling overwhelmed, it's just to stop. You can pause me and do it after I've explained it if you want. You stop, you close your eyes, you inhale through your mouth, not through your nose, for 4, count of 4. Hold it for 2 and then breathe out for 4. And you repeat that 6 times. And the power of the breath helps you sort of change the state of being that you're in. It helps ground you and it helps you just like brings you back to the present moment. So that's one thing I've learned about when I'm feeling so overwhelmed is just to remember to breathe. Allow what I'm feeling and look at this as an opportunity to learn more about what I need to do to move forward. For me, I registered this week. One of the reasons why I'd felt this sudden overwhelm like one day is because I'd not allowed myself time to myself, just to be by myself. I've had such a crazy few weeks. It had been my birthday, I'd been away, I was out last weekend at a festival, and usually like weekends, especially when you're working like during the weekends for me, I like to have some time to myself. And because I'd not had that space, I'd realised I'd not had that time that I needed just to sort of recharge, replenish my energy, and I was just in this constant state of go. And self-care is so important, and self-care isn't just about like having a face mask. It's about being by yourself, like being comfortable in the silence of you and having that time for you. And that's something I really have. So yeah, sorry about the fire alarm, but that's what happens when you feel recording. So I'm just going to carry on from where I left off. I was going to thought about editing it out, but I don't edit any other episodes, so I hope you enjoyed the momentary fire alarm there. But yeah, what I was saying is that is something that I have like really realised that's super, super important, is having that time for yourself, because we need it in order to replenish our energy, to like restore. And when we are in this like constant state of doing and going, like the time that we need to recharge is that time on our own when we can just be by ourselves. Like I said, self-care is about that, and it's about allowing yourself that time for you. So I'm just going to go through my like top tips for like dealing with overwhelm and how I sort of helps me get through it, because it is overwhelming when you feel overwhelmed, pardon the pun, but it is, because that feeling of overwhelm, like it can consume you. In the past it has consumed me, but it's about just knowing that it's okay to feel that, and it's just about how can we move through it. So top tip number 1 is, like I said a few moments ago, is just to remember to breathe. And it sounds so simple when we say it, just remember to breathe, but there is so much power in our breath. So doing the breathing exercise, like I said, the 6 deep breaths helps really ground you. It helps you bring yourself back to the present moment. And I like to affirm to myself, I am exactly where I need to be right now. And this to me is my favourite affirmation, because it reminds me to come back to that present moment and just remind yourself that it doesn't matter in the chaos of everything else that is going on currently, you are exactly where you need to be right now. So the breathing like brings you back to the present, it grounds you and brings you back then. Top tip number 2 is allowing yourself to feel the overwhelm. This is something that is really important, because it's something that I didn't allow myself to used to do. So by allowing yourself to feel it, you're leaning into it rather than resisting the feeling. So because when we lean into it, it means that we're trying to navigate our way through it, whereas when we resist it, we're just creating more overwhelm and this bigger barrier, and it's this bigger thing to overcome. So top tip number 2 is just allow yourself to feel it. Allow yourself to just feel whatever it is you're feeling. Obviously take the deep breaths and just know that you're working on a path to get through this overwhelm, that it's just a temporary feeling while we move on to the next step. Number 3 top tip top tip number 3, is to write it down. One thing, when I say write it down, there's 2 parts to this. Number 1 is to write it down, literally brain dump anything that is whizzing around your head. Get it out on a piece of paper. This is for me, it's like magic. Whenever I'm feeling super overwhelmed or feel like a lot is whizzing around in my brain, I get a pen and paper and I just write every single thing that my brain is thinking about at that moment in time. Maybe it's the things that you need to do, like all these, or if you've got ideas, just literally get a pen and paper and just brain dump everything. Get all the ideas outside of your head onto paper, and it helps really clear your mind. And then writing number 2 is journaling. And I talk so much about journaling because it is so powerful. So I wouldn't be an episode without a few journal prompts for you. So these are 4 journal prompts that I like to ask myself when I'm feeling overwhelmed. Number 1 is, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Because often when we, like I said at the start, this feeling of overwhelm, it stops us actually it stops us in our tracks from doing just like our daily like tasks. So ask yourself, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Prompt number 2 is, ask yourself, how am I feeling right now about my physical or mental health? And really understand how it is you're actually feeling. And ask yourself why are you feeling like that? Because it helps us like identify why we're feeling a certain way. Prompt number 3 is, what do I want to accomplish in the next 7 days? And by asking yourself this, is obviously we have our bigger goals, we have our bigger things that we want to achieve, but it's just about paving the next step. Like, what is the next step? What are the next things? What are the next things I want to accomplish in the next 7 days? And really like ask yourself what it is, because it's always about what is the next step in order to move forward. And then prompt number 4 is, what's one easy thing I can do in the next 10 minutes to get things going? And this is really like helpful prompt, because obviously when we're looking at a task, and this can where we can often feel overwhelmed too when we go to embark on a task, is about finding stuff that we can do to take action, because when we take action, that's when we build confidence, and that's when we feel like we're making that move forward. So that is prompt number 4. So yeah, like I said, tip number 3 is to write it down, brain dump everything in your brain, and then journal as well. So top tip number 4 is, if you're feeling overwhelmed, is move stuff around in your calendar for that day. So for example, when I was feeling overwhelmed the other day, I moved everything out the afternoon. I went to the gym, and then I went and had some much needed me time. I went for a walk, got a smoothie, and then decided to just go do something for me, and I went and got my nails done. And like I said, self-care isn't about like all about face masks, it's part of it, but I was just doing stuff for me and just having that time where I could just sit and be myself for 2 hours, just be with myself, get my nails done and not have to worry about anything else. It really helped me like just calm down, gain some clarity in order to help me step forward. So like I said, if you can move stuff around and take stuff out that's really energy intensive and do stuff that you actually love to do, and just give yourself that time to do the things that you actually truly love to do in order to help you like recharge, replenish and get some clarity in order to move forward. So top tip number 4 is to move stuff around and just have some time for you. And top tip number 5 is just to talk to someone. It sounds so simple, and often we feel like we may not want to burden people with our problems, but by talking to someone, it's really helpful because it helps us get a perspective shift. So for example, I have an amazing support network of friends, I have coaches who I speak to, in order to have someone to be able to talk it out. Just sometimes even just having someone, like I said, just to give you that perspective shift that's needed, helps you move forward and gives you some clarity, and just helps you even just offloading. Sometimes offloading is just a great way of, it just helps you get it out so you don't feel like you're alone dealing with the problem. And often this can be a very, very, very helpful thing to do. And sometimes even just, I don't even want to say like talking to yourself, but talking out loud, just just talk and just get out of your chest, like go for a walk and just talk out loud can help. By you talking out loud can really help you just it's just a release. So that is top tip number 5. So I'm just going to recap on today's episode of feeling overwhelmed and how to deal with it, because obviously, like I said, it is a feeling that we've all felt. We will all feel again at some point as well. And it's just about having the techniques just to help you move forward, so you know that overwhelm doesn't spill into another day, that you can deal with it. Because we all feel stressed sometimes. We get this emotional overwhelm, this is the intense emotion, and the intense emotion that we feel, which can often be like difficult for us to manage. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, like I said, my top tips for overcoming it are: 1 is to remember to breathe and just do the breath exercise and affirm that you are exactly where you need to be. Number 2 is allow yourself to feel the overwhelm rather than resisting it. Lean into it, because when we lean into it, it helps us be able to step forward and set a plan in motion to overcome it. Number 3 is to write it down. Top tip number 3 is to write it down. So part of one of that was to just brain dump everything that's in your head, and part 2 was to do the journal prompts. So they are to ask yourself, what am I supposed to be doing right now? How am I feeling right now about my physical and mental health? What do I want to accomplish in the next 7 days? And what's one easy thing I can do in the next 10 minutes to get things going? And like I said, top tip number 4 was just to move some stuff around. So if you're having a day where you're feeling super overwhelmed, see what you can move around in your calendar. Go and have that bit of time for you. Recharge, replenish your energy in order to help you get going to move forward. And top tip number 5 is just to talk to somebody. If that's a friend, coach, yourself, anyone, just talk it out. Sometimes it's great to talk it out just to get that perspective shift. So yeah, they're my top 5 tips for helping you get through overwhelm. So I am going to leave today's episode there. Thank you again so much for listening. I do really appreciate your time as always. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please do share it on your social medias and tag me at LornaMcKenna_ on Instagram. Or if you want to let me know what your key takeaways are from the episode, I'd love to connect with you all about it. But that being said, I am going to leave it there for today, and here is to making your mindset truly matter.